Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. Today I'm going to review the Stephen King novella Unfortunately, I don't have a hardcover book or book with me. I read this book via audiobook, but it was a very short book. Again, it was a novella, so probably around between 50 and 100 pages. But anyway, the main character of the book is a man named Wesley Smith. He is a English professor at Moore College in Kentucky. I meant to look up if that was real or fictitious, but anyway. And previously, before the book started, he had a girlfriend who also worked at the university. Her name was Ellen, and they had, a really good relationship, and then all of a sudden they broke up. And one of the things about Wesley is, even because he's an English professor, he really likes to read. And he was one of the arguments that they were having, or during one of the arguments, Wesley was reading a book. And even though this wasn't what their argument was about, Ellen had fired back saying, "Why can't you read off the computer like everyone else?" And so, intrigued by this, and also intrigued by a student of his that had a Kindle, Wesley decided to buy his own Kindle. And it's not like mine. I believe it was kind of the first ever Kindle editions. Like mine is probably one of the second ones or anything. Wesley's Kindle had a keyboard on the front of it where, you could type in rather than a touch screen like mine does. But anyway, and he's just kind of fiddling around with it. And one of the things that he gets is a screen that's called and evidently stands for ultimate reality, but that gets to later. And what he's discovering when he goes to this form of this Kindle is that he can have big access to multiple things from different authors. Like, for example, one of his favorite authors was Ernest Hemingway. And so he just kind of typed in, find all of these things by Ernest Hemingway. And the aspect, shot out multiple, like a whole bunch of different volumes of different works by Ernest Hemingway. And he was saying, Ernest Hemingway wrote, The Sun Also Rises, Farewell to Arms, and other things. And Ernest Hemingway supposedly had, a rather short, bibliography where he didn't write as much, but then according to this he wrote a bunch. And so Wesley had bought a book by Ernest Hemingway that he wasn't aware that Ernest Hemingway had written. So anyway, and he read it. And so he, along with the student that he had noticed had the Kindle in the first place, and a colleague of his, they had pawed through this Kindle's aspect and just seen, because they had books, like I said, they have newspaper print of the New York Times and things like that. So, but one of the things that this does, and especially with their newspaper clippings, is that they bring what's called the ultimate reality, or alternate reality maybe is more what it is, because, like, say for example, one of the examples they did was like November 22nd or 23rd, 1963, where of course on the New York Times the big heading would be about the Kennedy assassination. And so they did, and the article that day was about something else. Either Kennedy dodged the assassination, or the assassination didn't happen, or Kennedy was not even in Dallas. There was multiple versions of the New York Times in November 22nd, 1960, or November 23rd, I'm sorry. I keep saying 22nd. 1963, in this file that had multiple different, headlines. So again, like I said, either he dodged the assassination or the assassination just didn't happen and he just successfully visited Dallas, or he didn't visit Dallas at all. And that was kind of essentially what this ultimate reality or alternate reality kind of focused on. So it was interesting. Again, it wasn't a novel, but still there was a good story there. It was funny because when I was listening to it, two things kind of crossed my mind of different books that I've read. One of the things was the character. His name was Wesley Smith, and I'm like, I know the name Smith, and there was a W. Smith, and it reminded me of 1984, which was the character, but I had to actually look up or remember what the character's name was, so every time that I heard Wesley Smith, I kept thinking Winston Smith, which was the main character of 1984. And also, the whole aspect of this alternate reality kind of, especially with the Kennedy assassination, which may have that example popped in my head. This was kind of essentially what the book 11/22/63 was about with Stephen King. And let me look at my handy dandy little notes here of all of his books. And he had, so technically he had written the story before 11/22/63. So maybe he had that kind of aspect tinkering in his head or something else, whatever. So anyway, that's it for that review. Again, I liked it, but there were certain things I didn't like about it. The next story I'm going to read is also a novella, and it's called Blockade Billy. So that will be my next review, and I bid you all farewell and happy reading.